Hello and welcome to my potion scene tutorial. This is a two-part series. In the first part, we will do the modeling, and the second part, we will do materials, lighting, composition, and actually rendering it. Anyone can follow along with this tutorial. It is beginner friendly. I do move fairly fast, but I do let you know every key press I do, so you will be able to follow along even if you're brand new. All of the tutorial files are available completely for free on my website. You can find that link in the description. And what you're looking at here is the finished scene that we will get to by the end of the series. All right, let's get started. Okay, I have Blender 2.8 open. I'm going to hit A to select everything, X for delete, and Enter to lock in that deletion. I'm going to hold Shift and hit A, hover over Mesh, and click on Cylinder. And then I hit 1 to go into my front view. If you have a number pad, that's number pad 1. If you don't, go up to Edit, Preferences, Input, and then click on this Emulate Numpad. And then instead of numpad 1, it's just the number 1. All right, now I'm going to tab into Edit mode, zoom in here, hit G and Z, so I'm moving it on the Z axis only. I'm going to hold Control to lock that to the grid, and I'm going to left click so it's right up on this X axis. I'm going to tab into Object mode, and just going to show you if I hit S, the whole point of doing that was now if I scale, we're anchored on that bottom right there. I'm going to hit Escape on that. Let's tab back into Edit mode, hit, actually let's go up to here and click on this Face Select mode. I'm going to left click on this top face, hit X, and click on the faces. So we deleted that out. I'm going to left click to go back to vertices, 1 to go into my front view, and Z, and click on wireframe. So now let's actually start modeling out the shape of this bottle. So I'm going to hold Control and hit R, left click, and bring this down. So this is just a loop cut, and we're going to start forming the shape of the bottom of this bottle. So I'm going to hold Control, left click, another loop cut, and put that about here. I'm going to left click and drag and just get these bottom ones, hit S for scale, and I'm just going to bring this pretty far in, maybe about here. Now I'm going to left click and drag just to get these middle vertices, hit S, and I'm going to go in between these two, so not all the way here, not all the way out, but in between to kind of smooth this bottom curve out. So I'm going to left click to lock that in. Now I'm going to left click and drag to get these top vertices, scroll out a little bit, and I am going to hit E for extrude, and then Z to lock it on the Z axis, and I'm going to pull it up to, let's see, about here. Zoom back in, and we're going to work on the top section of this bottle. So E for extrude, this time I'm going to hit S to scale to immediately pull it in. Let's go to here, left click to lock that in, G and Z to move this up. So I'm going to bring it to about here. Now let's do that very top part, E and Z, bring it up to here. I'm going to do another E for extrude, S this time. Actually, I'm going to hit escape. I think I missed my extrude. E for extrude, S for scale, pull that out to about here. I'm going to hit G and Z and just pull this up a teeny bit. Hit extrude again, hit Z. I'm going to put one here, and then I'm going to hit E again and Z and put another cut right here. So let's tab in object mode, hit Z, and go into look dev so we can start seeing how this looks. So it looks okay. One thing you might notice is that the shading is off here. So if I hit F3, that lets you search. If you start typing in shade, you can click on shade smooth, and now it's being shaded smoothly. Another thing we're going to do, we're going to go over to the modifiers. I'm going to click on Add Modifier, Add Subdivision Surface, and I'm going to click this viewport up to 2. And that's just going to smooth everything out for us. So it's starting to look a lot more like a real bottle. And so this bottle is going to be clear, and we're going to see through it, so it needs to have some thickness. So I'm going to go add another modifier and click on this solidify modifier. So if I zoom in here right to the lip, if I click this little icon here, you'll see the thickness being turned on and off. I'm going to go to 0.02. I think that's a good number. And let's kind of just see what we think about this bottle. I think it's looking pretty good for now. To be a good time to go ahead and save, I'm going to hold Control, hit S, navigate to where I'm building this project, name it Potions, and save it. Alright, so now that we have that first bottle done, let's make sure we've left clicked on it, hit 1 to go to front view, hit G for move, and X to move it on the X axis. I'm just moving it to the side so we can work on the next bottle. So our next one's going to be really small in comparison, and actually, I'm going to bring this back, G, X, a little closer, just so I can reference it for scale. I'm going to hold Shift, hit A, hover over Mesh, and click on Cube. We're going to tab in Edit Mode, G, Z, hold Control, and we're just putting that on the X axis again. So I'm going to tab back into Object Mode. I'm just going to go ahead and scale this down right now even. Let's go to about... Let's see here. That should be pretty good. Tab back into Edit Mode, hit Z, and click on Wireframe. So I'm just going to go ahead and add in some loop cuts that I know I want to have. So I'm going to hold Control, hit R, and I'm going to left click and bring this down to about here. And then I'm going to left click and drag, hit S, and I'm going to bring this in really small. I want this to have a really small bottom base. That should be pretty good. I might left click and drag, hit G and Z and move this back up a little bit. Okay, that should be pretty good. I'm going to left click and drag here. Actually, while we're at it, let's hit Z and go into Look Dev. And I'm going to click on this face select mode and just make sure you just have left click, just have this face selected, hit X, and click on faces. So we deleted that top face again. So I'm going to left click and go back to vertices mode, 1 to go in my front view, Z, and then click on wireframe. Left click and drag to select these vertices. I'm going to hit E for extrude, S for scale. I'm going to bring this in pretty far, probably about here. Hit G and Z to move it up to about here. And let's hit E for extrude again, Z, and we're going to go to about here, hit S. This one, kind of the neck of the bottle is going to taper in, so I'm going to bring it to about here, zoom in a little bit, hit E for extrude, S, bring that out to here, G and Z to move it on the Z axis to about here, E for extrude, Z, and this will be the top of the bottle. In this case, we're not going to do a solidify modifier, so I'm actually just going to hit 1 again to get back to this front view, and I'm going to hit E and S and just bring this in here. We're just going to make our own little fake lip here, and I'm going to E to extrude down and hit Z and bring that to about here. So let's tab out of Edit Mode to Object Mode, hit Z, go to Look Dev, and see what we're looking at here. Okay, so it's still very boxy, so let's go to our modifiers, add in a subdivision surface, change it up to 2. Actually, you know what? We might end up changing these to 3, but for now we'll start with 2. We still need to make it shaded smooth, so hit F3, type in shade, and click on this shade smooth. And this is much closer to what we're looking for. I think I still kind of want this to be more of a dramatic shaped bottle. You might like this, but if you tab back into edit mode, I'm going to hit Z and click on this wireframe. I'm going to click and drag, and so I'm going to scale this down even more. And I'm going to left click and drag and get these vertices, hit G and Z, and bring them down. Actually, maybe bring it up just to really exaggerate how much of a curve it is here. Hit Z, so I tabbed out of edit mode there, and I'm gonna hit Z and go to my look dev. And this is probably getting on the edge of any more curve than this and less of a bottom, this, would just fall over on a table. But I think this looks pretty good, and I kind of like it for its stylized look. And I think that's looking pretty good. So I'm going to Control S to save again. Okay, let's keep trucking along and make another bottle. So I'm going to hit 1 to go in my front view. I still have this selected, so I'm going to hit G and X just to move that on the X. Give myself some space. I'm going to left click G and X on this also. But again, it's still kind of nice to have these here as reference for our scale. So I'm going to hold Shift and hit A, hover over Mesh, and I'm going to add in a UV sphere this time. And so let's see, I'm going to scale this up. I want to be, let's see, it's going to be kind of in between the size of both of these, and it's still going to get moved up. So let's go with about here, should be pretty good. I'm going to tab into edit mode, hit X and click, Z and click on wireframe. So now I'm going to do like I have been and move this up so it's on the X axis. So I'm going to hit G and Z, but this time I'm going to end up cutting this sphere. So I'm going to hold Control to where those vertices line up right there. And so I'm actually going to left click and drag and select these bottom ones, hit X and click on vertices to delete those vertices. So we have an empty hole down here, so I'm going to click and drag here, select all those vertices, hit F, and that's just going to fill it in so it's not a hole in the bottom. Alright, so now we need to work on the top of the bottle, and so I'm going to left click and drag, and I think, let's see, I think this will be a pretty good spot to cut it. I'm going to hit X and left click on vertices, and now we can continue working. So let's see where we're at. I'm going to hit Tab to go out of edit mode and object mode, hit Z and click on look dev. So if I rotate around, we see it's looking pretty good, but I want this to kind of be a really narrow bottle. So I'm going to hit 7 to go to my top view, hit S for scale, and then X to do it specifically on the X. Actually, I'm going to escape that. I'm going to hit S and then Y to do it on the Y axis. So I'm just going to bring this down. I kind of want this to be this type of shape of a bottle. So that's looking kind of like what I'm envisioning, so that's pretty good. So I'm going to hit 1 to go back into my front view, Z, and then click on wireframe, tab to go into edit mode, and now I'm going to left click and drag and select these vertices. So we're going to hit E for extrude and Z to keep it on the Z. Go about there, left click, and I'm going to hit S for scale. And I'm just going to start bringing these in. Now if I rotate around, and I'm going to hit 7 to go to my top view, this eventually is going to go into a spout. And so it needs to get, it's really an oval shape when you get closer to a circular shape. So I'm going to start trying to fix that now and hit S and X to do it on the X axis. And we're just going to bring this in so that we start to get closer to a circular shape there. Let's see, I'm going to hit 7. I'm just trying to see if I want to still bring this back out a little bit. I'm going to hit S and X again. I'm going to bring it back out a bit. I'm going to make this more gradual. It was going to be pretty dramatic like that. So I'm going to hit 1, E for extrude, Z, and we're going to still work this in, S for scale, bring this in. I'm going to hit 7, and we are going to hit this S for scale, X, and just get this a lot closer to a circular shape at this point. So we're closer to a circle there. I'm going to hit 1 to go back to my front view, E, Z, and let's kind of see where we are at. Let's see, is it close enough to a circle now? I'm going to left click here, hit S, and I want this one to kind of slant in. I'm going to rotate around. I'm going to hit 7. And yeah, let's get this closer to a circle. So we're still not quite there. So I'm going to hit S and X. And right about there looks like a good circle to me. I'm going to zoom out. And yeah, I think that's looking pretty good. So we hit 1 to go back into my front view. We're just going to keep modeling this out. So E for extrude, Z to keep it on the Z axis. go to about here. I'm going to zoom out. Just going to compare where we're at to the size of my bottle. I think that does look pretty good for the scale here. I do kind of want, this is still kind of quick for me, the jump from here to here. So I'm going to left click and drag and get all of these without getting those vertices up here. So I'm going to hit G and Z. I'm just going to move this down a bit. And let's try holding control and hitting R and left click, and hit S. I'm just going to bring this out a little bit. Actually, I'm going to hit escape on that. Let me see. It might not be bad, but I'm going to hit S and maybe just a little bit. I'm going to bring this back out to about here. And we'll see how this looks. So let's go back to the top. I'm going to left click and drag here. I'm going to hit E for extrude, S. Just going to bring this one straight out this time. Go to about here. E for extrude, Z, and bring that up to here. I'm going to zoom out and again kind of check where we're at in our scale. All right, so I'm going to tab out of here, hit Z, and go back to this look dev. All right, so first we need to add our smooth shading. So I'm going to hit F3, type in smooth. Okay. There is a little bit of a bump here. I'm not sure when that happened, but it might look all right. So let's keep going with it for now at least. Tab out of edit mode, and let's go add our subdivision surface. Put that up to 2. And this looks all right. It's not exactly, I want it to be more circular here. So I'm going to tab back into edit mode, hit Z, go to wireframe, and let's see. And also, while I'm working, I'm going to turn off this subdivision surface so I can see what I'm doing a little bit better. So I want it to still curve in more. Actually, more what it is I want all of I want these vertices. I'm going to select all of these and hit S for scale. And then I'm going to bring that out a bit. Actually, I'm going to hit escape on that just to see what I'm doing. Hit S, bring that out a little bit. I just wanted it to be more of a curvature towards the bottom. And now I'm going to left click and drag on this bottom one to hit S for scale and bring that in. I'm going to tab out, hit Z, and go to my look dev. And I'm going to turn that subdivision surface back on. Okay, so that's closer to what I'm looking for. I think the other thing is it's a little too wide. So I'm going to scale the whole thing down first, hit S, bring it down a bit. And then I'm going to hit S and X just to scale the whole thing back in a little bit. And that's starting to look closer to how I was envisioning it. I don't think the neck's a little too tall, so I'm going to tab into edit mode, Z, go to wireframe. And I'm just going to left click and select all of those top vertices, hit G and Z. I'm just going to bring it down. Tab out of there, hit Z, and go to my look dev. Okay, that's definitely looking a lot better, and I think I'm happy with that result there. So I'm going to go ahead and save. Okay, the next one we're going to make is kind of like those little chemistry set little vials. So I'm going to hit G and X with this still selected to move this away. I'm going to left click and G and X this little bottle closer. I just know the vial is going to be close to this size, so I'm just going to keep this close so I can see the scale really easily. I'm going to hold Shift, hit A, hover over mesh, and add in a cylinder. I'm just going to rotate around here. Mine is filled. I'm actually going to go ahead, actually just leave. I'm going to hit 1 and then tab into edit mode, do the GZ, hold control, and we're going to place it there. I'm going to tab back out and scale this down. So it's going to be pretty narrow. Comparing it to the bottle next to it, that looks about how narrow it's going to be. So currently it's still filled at the top. So let me rotate around, hit tab, and I'm going to click on my face select, left click on this top face, hit X, and delete the face. So now I'm going to go back to my vertices select mode, hit 1, and now we can continue modeling this. So let's see, we need it, I'm wondering if it's still too thick, but not, that's pretty good. So hit Z and go back to wireframe, and we are going to hold control and hit R, and let's go ahead and actually I scrolled my wheel up to do more cuts, but I'm actually going to go back down to 1, left click, and then bring this down to about here. I'm going to control R, add in another one, and bring it to about here. Now I'm going to zoom in real close, left click and drag on these very bottom vertices, hit S, and I'm going to bring this real far down till it's pretty tight. Then I'm going to left click and drag, and I'm going to hit S for scale. I'm going to go in between those two. Alright, so that looks pretty good to me. Scroll out a bit. Now I'm going to left click and drag these vertices, hit E for extrude, Z to keep it on the Z, and let's see, so this thing should be a bit taller than the other little vial. I'm thinking about here looks pretty good. I'm going to hit E for extrude, S for scale, bring it out to about here, hit G and Z just to move this up a bit. I think that's pretty good. Zoom in. Actually, maybe I'll hit S and just scale it a little bit more. It's very small, but hit E for extrude and Z to keep it on the Z. And let's go to just about here. They're not super, not a huge room on these things. So I tabbed out of edit mode, hit Z, go to our look dev, and scroll out and see what we think about that. So it looks pretty good. I'm going to scroll back in, and as we've been doing, I'm going to hit F3. If you type in shade, or if you already have it here, you can click on the shade smooth. So now it's shaded smooth. And let's go ahead and give this a subdivision surface. Also put that to 2. And as you see in this case, it really curved this out. So I'm going to hit 1, tab back into edit mode, Z, and go back to my wireframe. And I'm going to hold control and hit R down here and left click. And I'm just going to bring this really close up to these other vertices. And that's just going to keep this to be a lot sharper. So I'm going to tab out of edit mode, Z, and go to look dev. And now that's looking a lot better. So let's zoom in here, and we're going to add in our other modifier. This one is going to be clear, so we need to add the solidify modifier. And again, it's slight there, but I'm going to go ahead and do 0.02, hit enter, and now there's a little bit of a thickness to this. And while I'm thinking about it, I think I forgot to add a thickness to this bottle. I did. So I'm going to left click on that, go to the modifiers, go to solidify, and I'm going to change this to 0.02. And now that one has a thickness. Okay, so we've got the vial made, and I am pretty happy with the scale. Part of me still thinks it's a little bit too big. You could hit S to see, but no, I'm going to hit escape. I think that is pretty good. These bottles here are pretty small, so that should be good. We'll go ahead and save. So these are going to be held up like a little chemistry set. So I'm going to hit G and Z, and I'm going to bring it up, let's see, to about maybe here. I'm going to hold Shift, hit D, and hit X to keep it on the X axis. And we're just going to make this a little set. So I'm going to space it out maybe to about here, hit Shift D, X, try to make this kind of even here, and left click there. Alright, so we've got our 3 little vials. Now we need something to hold them up. So I'm going to hold Shift, hit A, and I'm going to add in a torus. If I hit 7 to go my top view and zoom in a little bit, actually, and then I'm going to hit Z, wireframe, and an S for scale. I'm just going to bring it down until this torus is kind of holding this vial. So I'm going to hit 1 to go to my front view, GZ, and we're just going to bring this up. GZ, bring it up. it's really large at the moment still. So I'm gonna hit S, the scale, and let's see. How's this looking? So you can kind of see the edge here. You want to actually be kind of holding it, so you don't want to really overlap, but you can get away with a little bit. So maybe about here's good. Hit G and Z and bring it up to where it would rest. I'm hit 1 to go my front view, G and Z, just see where it really would rest. That looks pretty good to me. Let's do Z and look dev and kind of scroll around just to see that this does in fact look pretty good. Yeah, I'm happy with how that looks. So let's hit F3 and click on this shade smooth. And I'm gonna hit 1 to go my front view, and we're just gonna duplicate this. So Shift D, X to keep it on X. Really try to center this out. You might want to hit Z and go to your wireframe. GX and just try to get this really centered. And one more time, we're going to hold Shift and hit D for duplicate, X, and we're just going to bring this over until it's centered. Hit Z and go into our look dev mode. Zoom out, kind of scroll around. Okay, so they're being held up. Now they actually need to be attached to something. All right. So I'm going to hold Shift, hit A, add in a cube. I'm going to hit 7 to go to my top view. Scroll in a bit, hit S for scale. And I'm just going to hit G and Y just to move this where I can see it a little bit more. Hit S for scale. I'm just trying to get it to the width that I'm going to want it at. So this looks like a pretty good width to me. I'm going to hit 3 to go into my side view. My other bottles are kind of blocking what's going on here. So I'm going to left click on both of these bottles. So I left clicked on one, I shift left clicked on the other. I'm going to hit G and Y just to move these so they're not going to be in my way. Now if I hit 3, I can see what I'm doing a little bit better. So I'm going to left click on this cube we made, hit G. I'm just going to freely move it up here while in this view. G, hit S for scale, G. I just kind of want it to be in between vertically and then overlapping there. So that looks pretty good to me. I'm going to tab into edit mode, hit 3, and then hit Z to go into wireframe. And just so you know, I'm going to wireframe because when I click and drag here, if you don't, you might not get these back vertices. So I'm going to hit 3 to go back. Just so you know, that's one reason I do it, and also just so I can see a little bit better. So I'm going to hit E for extrude, and I'm just going to pull this out until we've got a little bit of a structure. I left clicked, but I'm going to hit G and Y just to make it go out a little further. I think that looks pretty good to me. So now I'm going to make a little cut here. So I'm going to hold Control, hit R, left click, bring this to about here. I'm going to left click and drag on these vertices, hit E, and I'm going to hold Control and just get that right to the bottom. Now I'm going to hold Control, hit R, left click here, bring this down till it's close to square. Okay, now I'm going to left click and drag and get these vertices, hit E, and we're just going to bring this all the way out until it's right. Actually, I was thinking about holding Control, but you know what, I'm just going to bring it, eyeball it to about there. So let's hit Tab and hit Z and go back to Look Dev. Let's see, does this make any sense? Yeah, that's looking pretty good to me. So now we just need to add those in for the other little vials. So I hit 7 to go my top view. I'm going to tab in edit mode. This time I'm going to add a duplicate these while in edit mode. So I'm going to hit A, and since I'm in edit mode for this, it selects all these vertices. And if I hit Shift D and X, I just can duplicate that. I might zoom in a little bit here, make sure it's centered. That does look pretty good. Shift D and X. And the difference of doing it while in edit mode, if I tab out, you'll see, and if I hit G, you'll see these are all one object. I'm going to hit escape on that. I was just trying to demonstrate. So that is looking pretty good to me. And now I'm going to hit 7 tab back into edit mode. And this isn't gonna be too close to the camera, so I'm gonna just select. I clicked on my face select mode. I'm just gonna click on this face right here, hit 7, I'm gonna hit E and just extrude this out and just make sure it intersects here and doesn't stick out or anything. So if I tab back into object mode, scroll around, I'm also gonna move this just so we can see. So I left clicked on this, G, X, move it out of the way. If I scroll out, you can see we've got our little chemistry alchemy set going for us. I'm going to go ahead and save. And while we're at it, I'm going to go ahead and make this a little easier to work with, because right now if I left click on this, hit G, these are not connected. I'm going to escape on that. So I'm going to hold shift, hit A, and add in an empty, and I'm going to do a plain axes. I'm going to hit S to scale it up until it's sticking out. I'm going to hit 1 to go in my front view, G and X. I'm just going to go ahead and center it here. And now I'm going to left click and drag and get everything, or all these objects. I'm going to hold shift and left click the empty here, and then shift left click it one more time. So it should go dark and then back to colored. I'm going to hold control and hit P. And so what we're doing here is we're parenting, and I'm going to click on object. So basically what we did was to parent something, you can click on different objects and then select the last one. And then whichever one was the last you selected becomes the parent. So now if I left click on the empty and hit G, you see it's all moving together, which is kind of nice. So I'm going to hit escape on that, 1 to go my front view, and I'm just going to hit G and X just to move all of those objects out of the way while we work on this next bottle. I'm also going to left click on this one, GX, give us some more space. This next bottle is a little bigger. Left click on this one, GX, give us some more space. Okay, let's work on the last bottle. I'm going to hold A, hit shift, or hold shift, hit A, go to mesh, and click on cube. I'm going to tab into edit mode, scroll in here, hit G and Z as we've been doing, hold control, left click. I'm going to tab out of here. I'm going to go ahead and scale this up a little bit, hit S. I'm just going to bring it up to, let's see, maybe about, I'm trying to see how it should compare to the other bottles, maybe about here. Alright, so for this one I'm actually going to start with the subdivision surface on there, so I'm going to go over to the modifiers and click on this subdivision surface, and I'm going to take it up to 3 both in the render and the viewport. So let's tab into edit mode, and I'm going to hold control and hit R for a loop cut, left click, and we're just going to bring this down, not all the way to the bottom, but near the bottom to about here. So I'm going to left click to lock that in. Okay, let's see. I'm also going to hold control, hit R, left click, and actually, you know what, let's escape on that, and then control Z. I don't think we need that cut after all. I'm going to hold control, hit R, hover my mouse up here, hit the scroll wheel up once to have 2 cuts. I'm going to left click to lock that in, and then hit S and Y to scale these apart on the Y. And I'm going to bring it out so it's near the edge to give this a little bit of a lip here. I'm going to left click, and that looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to tab out of edit mode. Right now it's really not the right shape, so I'm going to hit 7 to go to my top view, hit S and Y. I'm going to bring this in to be closer to the shape that we're looking for, and that looks pretty good to me. Alright, so it's still maybe a little too tall. I'm going to tab into edit mode, Z for the wireframe, and let's go ahead and left click and drag, hit G and Z, pull this down a bit. Okay, let's see, what else do we want to do on this bottle? So I'm going to hold control, hit R, scroll wheel up, left click, and hit SX, and bring these closer to each other here to about, actually maybe where it was in the beginning was good, but about here is good. Now I'm going to left click and drag to get these vertices. Oh, and then somehow I got onto edge select mode. I'm going to left click onto the vertices select. So I'm going to left click and drag here, and I'm going to hold shift and left click and drag here. So now if I scroll around, you see I just have those vertices selected, and I'm going to hit S and X to scale on the X, just to bring that all in. Okay, so I'm going to hit one thing in my front view. That is closer to the shape I want. It's still too tall. I'm actually going to hit S and X and bring that back out a little bit, maybe about there. Left click and drag, select all those vertices, hit G and Z, and let's bring it down to about, I think here looks pretty good. So I'm going to left click there, tab into object mode, hit Z, go to my look dev, kind of see where we're at here. Let's see, do I love, it's very curved here, and I'm not sure that's exactly what I wanted. Let me tab in the edit mode. Let's see, I'm going to hit Z for wireframe, or Z and then click on wireframe, left click and drag, zoom in a little bit, I'm going to hit G and Z, just kind of see how it looks if I bring this down. Yeah, so I want this to be even closer to the bottom here. I think this looks pretty good. Left click to lock that in, tab to exit, Z, and then look dev. So I like the overall shape. I'm going to scroll around here just to kind of look around a little bit more. Let's go ahead and hit F3 and hit that shade smooth again. And I'm going to hit one thing in my front view. And this just still needs to be a bit taller. So I'm going to hit S for scale, bring it up. I think I want this part to end about halfway to this taller bottle over here. So I think that looks pretty good there. Okay, so now we have to do the top part. So I'm going to tab back into edit mode, and let's see. Part of me thinks maybe we should bring these in. If you hold Alt and hit A, it's going to deselect everything. I'm going to hold Shift and Alt and left click here, and hold Shift, Alt, left click here. Let's try out hitting S for scale and Y and see how this looks to bring it in. I'm going to bring it in kind of to where that top face is close to being a square here. And I think I like how that looks a little bit better. So let's click on this face select mode. I'm not going to left click on this face, hit X and delete the face. And now I'm going to click back into vertices, left click on this one, shift, left click, shift, left click, shift, left click. Hit 1 to go to my front view. I hit E for extrude and Z to keep it on the Z axis. And just bring it up a bit here. Something like that should be pretty good. I'm going to zoom in, see what I'm doing a little bit better. E, Z, bring it up to here. I'm going to scale this out to here. E for extrude, Z. Let's see. I'm going to bring it to about here. E, Z. Bring this one up just a little bit. Hit S. And I want this one to have a little bit of a different lip here. I'm actually going to hit G and Z and bring this back down a little bit. So it's pretty close. If I zoom in, we're getting pretty close to where this one's at. And let's tab out of edit mode, kind of see where we're at and how it looks. It looks pretty good to me. And let's go ahead and add another modifier. Let's add that solidify and make this a 0.02. And let's kind of see if we think it looks pretty good. So I think that is looking pretty good. This bottom edge is bothering me a little bit, so let's maybe take a quick second to see how we could change that. There's just something. I'm going to left click, make sure it's selected, tab into edit mode, scroll down here, hit Z to go into, and then click on wireframe. I'm going to left click and drag and just get these vertices. There's something about this curve here, so let me see. If I just hit S for scale and X, if I bring it out a little bit, maybe that's just a little bit of a difference there. I just didn't love the curvature, so I'm just going to left click here, and it's this pretty subtle change. Hit Z or tab to go out of edit mode, Z and look dev, And it's a subtle difference, but I think that looks pretty good. Go ahead and save. I think what it is it's still a little too wide, so I'm gonna hit S for scale and hit X. I'm just gonna bring it in a little bit here so it's not as wide. I'm gonna tab in edit mode, hit Z, and then go to wireframe. I'm gonna left click and drag it all these here, hit G and Z. I'm just gonna bring this down a bit here. Just a little bit. I think, let's see, I think I am gonna bring it down maybe to about here, tab back out, hit Z, go into look dev. Yeah, I think I like that a little bit better. It's closer to the shape that I was going for. So, and this is going to be kind of our hero shot, our hero potion. So I think it should be a little bit bigger maybe. So in object mode, hit S and just bring it back up to be a little bit taller, just a little bit. We can always adjust that later, but I think that's probably a little bit better. This potion has a Suzanne head on it. If you're not familiar, Suzanne's kind of the mascot of Blender. So if you hit Shift A, go to Mesh, and click on Monkey, you'll get the Suzanne head added. Hit GZ to move it up and bring it here. She's really got a big head currently, so I'm gonna hit S for scale and bring this down to about here. I'm gonna hit 3 to go into my side view, hit G. Just kind of play with this placement a little bit. You know, they can overlap. You could play with this and get it perfect. You could even rotate her head around, but I think I'm just gonna go for something like this. And let's just check it. I'm gonna scroll around a bit to see kind of what I think, how that looks. Even I'm gonna take this further. I'm gonna hit G and Z. I kind of want the head really sitting in this bottle. I'm gonna hit GZ, maybe bring it back up a little bit, but I think that looks pretty good. I like how that's matching up here. If I hit 1 to go to my front view, still might be a little bit large. I'm gonna hit S, bring it down just a little bit, and then G and Z really make Suzanne sit right on there. And I'm gonna, even though it's probably a little more realistic how it is, I'm gonna hit G and Y, just sneak Suzanne forward a bit to about there. So hit 1 to go in the front view. I think that's looking pretty good. I'm gonna hit F3, and if you still have shade smooth here, you just click on shade smooth. Let's go ahead and give her a subdivision modifier. So in the modifiers, let's add modifier and click on subdivision surface. Let's go up to 2. The rest of the bottle is at 3, so maybe let's even put it up to 3. Especially this will be the main center of our image. So hit 1 to go to my front view, and I think that's pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and save. Okay, so this bottle also has some little balls on it to make it a little bit more intricate and interesting. So let's go ahead and add those. So I'm gonna hold Shift and hit A, hover over Mesh, and add in an icosphere. I'm gonna hit G, bring it up to about here, zoom in, S for scale, bring that back down to about here. That looks pretty good to me. I'm gonna hit 7 to just check how large it is there. I'm actually gonna go a little bit bigger. I'm gonna hit S and just bring it up a little bit. We're going to go to the modifiers, add modifier, subdivision surface. And this is pretty small and kind of far away. So I'm actually gonna bring down the render to 1, just have it 1 for both of those. With my mouse on the left side, I'm gonna hit F3 and type in that shade smooth and click on it. So if I go 1 to my front view, you can see we're starting to add these balls here. So one thing I'm going to do to make it easier to see what we're doing, I'm going to left click on this bottle here, go to this circle where you can add materials. We're going to add a new material, and I'm going to collapse this surface by clicking here, collapse settings, and all I really want to do here is change this viewport display color to red. And that's just going to make it easier to see what we're doing. So now I'm going to left click back onto this ball. And I like to mirror things from the other side. So I'm going to hit G and just bring this over here. And we're going to go back to the modifiers, add modifier, and click on mirror. And so now under this settings here, I'm going to click on mirror object, click on the eyedropper, and click on the bottle itself. So now if I hit G, you can see we have these balls mirrored on both sides. I'm going to hit escape to escape on that. One thing I'm going to do to make things a little easier, or another thing I'm going to do to make things easier, is I'm going to drag out some more views. So if I have my mouse on the top and I click and drag, I have another view here. I'm actually going to bring this over more. Bring my mouse back to the top and pull down. And now I'm going to put this one, I'm going to hit 1 on, so it's in my front view. With my mouse in the bottom section, I'm hit 3, so I'm in the side view. And this one I'm hit 7 to be in the top view. And so now it's just going to be a matter of adding more spheres. But I'm going to tab into edit mode so that when we add new spheres, they're all in the same object rather than separate objects. So make sure you tab into edit mode, you have that selected. Now hit Shift D and just start moving these around. And so I'm going to put it here, but one thing you'll see why I've done this is that the ball's sticking out since it curves here. So use your different views to help you get these actually on the bottle. And I'm putting these spheres about halfway in. So I've got it here, I'm going to hit G and just bring this sphere to be about halfway in. And just pay attention where your mouse is. So I have my mouse over here, I'm going to hit Shift D. And I actually could hit Y to lock this in the Y if I'd like to be more exact. And those should be in good position. If I hit Shift D, I can add another one here. But if you see in the viewport here, it's very off. So I've hit G and just go ahead and bring that in. And maybe to about there. Now it's in the proper place. So it's just a matter of going through and adding these. So one thing you can also keep in mind is if you hold Alt and A, you'll deselect everything. And while in edit mode, if you want to just get a certain group of vertices, you can hit L and you'll select those. And I'm going to hit L again to select this one also. So just make sure you have your mouse hovered over the one you want before you hit L. I'm going to hold Shift and hit D. I'm going to hit Z to lock it into the Z axis, bring it down. You can't see where it is at the moment, so I'm going to hit G and X to bring it out here from this view. And I'm going to have one more of these. So I'm going to, with my mouse over here, I'm going to hit Shift D and Z again, bring it to about here. With my mouse in this view, I'm going to hit G and X to bring these out and put it about here. Now I'm going to hold Alt and hit A to deselect those. I'm going to hit L to get this one, hit Shift D and Z, bring it to about here. My mouse over here, G and X, and bring it to where it makes sense. So now I'm just going to scroll around and see if that looks good. Okay, so all those balls are correctly touching the bottle there. So let's work on the front face now. I'm hit 1 to go into my front view. Okay, yeah, so let's keep going. I'm going to hit Shift D. I'm just going to drag this one over. Where did it go? So I'm going to hit 7 to go my top view, hit G, just bring this one out to where I can find it. So I'm going to left click, put it there. G and bring it up. We're going to start at the top and then move down the bottle. So maybe I'm going to put one here. And you can see in these other views that it's really off. So I'm going to hit G and pull it back until where it makes sense. So that looks pretty good. And again, it's just a process of doing this and getting them in the right position. So, and you can add as few or as many as you want. If you're getting bored with me, you can pause, fast forward, and go ahead. I'm just going to leave this all in just so people can see the whole process, start to finish, with how I made this. So, just keeping an eye on where they're sticking out, how far they are, and just the overall look and feel of it, and what you think. It curves less as you go down, so you don't need to make as many adjustments this direction. But if you want to be more exact, there should be some movement. But I'm just going to continue on. Maybe put this one here. Throw this one here. I think we should have some more in the middle here. Maybe about that. I think that looks pretty good there. I did have a couple in my render on the head, so maybe let's go ahead and add a couple on the head too. I'm going to hit Shift D, bring it all the way up to the head. Left click, and with my mouse over here, I'm just going to bring this in to about here. Zoom in. This time I'm going to hit G and Z just so I know right where I've got it. I think that looks pretty good. Get this to where I can see. Shift D. Maybe just add one more about here. Let's see, what do we think looks good? Closer or further together? I think closer together here looks kind of good. So I'm going to left click and lock it in here. So I'm going to tab out of edit mode, hold Alt, hit A to deselect everything. I'm just going to scroll around and make sure I'm happy with the way it looks. And yeah, I am happy with the way it looks. Like I said, you could go ahead and add balls to the back, but for the sake of this tutorial and we're facing the camera, it won't really make much of a difference. So I'm going to hit 1 to go to my front view and save. Okay, so I'm just going to close these windows up. I'm going to hover here, click and drag up, and then I'm going to close this one, click and hold and drag. If you made a new window by accident, just try it again and get them closed. So I'm going to hit 1 to go in my front view, and we are done with the modeling. Alright, that's it for part 1. I look forward to having you back for part 2.